In the sleepy village of Alderwood, surrounded by ancient woods and shrouded in mist, there was an old manor house that had long since been abandoned. Whispers of strange occurrences circulated among the villagers, but none dared to venture too close, except for one. Emily was a peculiar child, quiet and often lost in her own thoughts. Her eyes, large and dark, seemed to see things others could not. She was drawn to the old manor, often slipping away from her home to wander its overgrown gardens and gaze at its broken windows. The villagers warned her parents, but they shrugged it off as a child's curiosity. One crisp autumn evening, Emily's curiosity led her inside the manor. The wooden floorboards creaked under her small feet as she explored the dusty halls. She found herself in a grand ballroom, its once opulent decor now faded and decayed. In the center of the room stood a tall mirror, its surface cloudy with age. Emily approached the mirror, feeling a chill in the air. As she wiped away the dust, she saw a reflection that was not her own. It was a ghostly figure of a woman, eyes hollow and filled with sorrow. The ghost's presence was both terrifying and pitiful, as if she had been trapped in her own despair for centuries. "Who are you?" Emily whispered, her voice barely audible. The ghost did not answer but raised a bony finger to point at Emily. The child's heart raced, but she could not look away. The room grew colder, and the ghost began to change. Her sorrow twisted into anger, her form becoming monstrous. The air crackled with malevolent energy, and the ghost's eyes bore into Emily's soul. Frightened, Emily turned and fled, her small feet pounding down the halls and out into the night. She didn't stop running until she reached her home, breathless and trembling. She tried to tell her parents about the ghost, but they dismissed her claims as a vivid imagination. Days turned into weeks, and Emily's behavior grew stranger. She became withdrawn, her eyes haunted by the ghostly figure she had seen. She would often wake up screaming in the middle of the night, claiming the ghost was watching her. Her parents, worried, sought help from the village priest. Father Michael was a stern man, well versed in the supernatural. He listened to Emily's story with a grave expression. That night, he went to the manor with holy water and a prayer book, determined to cleanse the house of its ghostly inhabitant. Hours passed, and the villagers waited anxiously. When Father Michael finally emerged, his face was pale, his hands trembling. He had encountered the ghost, but he could not banish her. She was too powerful, her anger too great. Emily's condition worsened. She began to speak in a voice that was not her own, uttering dark prophecies and curses. Her parents, now terrified, kept her locked in her room, hoping to protect her from whatever evil had taken hold. But the ghost was relentless. Every night, she visited Emily, drawing her deeper into madness. The child who had once been curious and innocent was now a vessel for the ghost's fury. The villagers, fearful for their own safety, demanded that the family leave Alderwood. With heavy hearts, Emily's parents took her far away, hoping to escape the ghost's wrath. But the ghost's influence was too strong, and Emily was never the same. She grew into a haunted adult, her life a shadow of what it might have been. The manor in Alderwood remains abandoned, a dark reminder of the ghost's malevolent power. And though the villagers avoid it, they can still hear the faint whispers of a child's voice echoing through the halls, forever haunted by the ghost of little Emily. Years passed, and Alderwood fell into a deeper state of decay. The manor, once a symbol of prestige, became a beacon of dread, standing tall against the test of time, refusing to be forgotten. Despite the village's attempts to move on, the shadow of the haunted manor lingered, a constant reminder of the horrors that once took place. One cold winter's night, a stranger arrived in Alderwood Drive. Isaac Hawthorne, a psychologist known for his unorthodox methods, had heard the stories of the haunted manor and Emily's tragic fate. He was drawn to the mystery, determined to uncover the truth behind the ghost and the girl who had been driven to madness. Isaac rented a small cottage on the outskirts of the village and began his investigation. He spoke with the villagers, piecing together the fragmented tales of Emily's encounters with the ghost. The more he learned, the more he became convinced that the ghost was not merely a lost soul, but something far more sinister. One evening, Isaac met with Father Michael. The old priest had retired from his duties but still carried the weight of his failure to banish the ghost. He shared with Isaac the details of his encounter, describing the ghost's transformation from a sorrowful figure to a monstrous entity. "I felt an overwhelming sense of dread," Father Michael said, his voice trembling. "It was as if the ghost fed on my fear, growing stronger with each passing moment. I could not fight it. I barely escaped with my life." Isaac listened intently, his mind racing with possibilities. He had encountered similar cases before, where spirits were not mere apparitions but manifestations of deep, unresolved trauma. He believed that the ghost and Emily were connected in ways that went beyond the physical realm. Determined to uncover the truth, Isaac decided to visit the manor. Armed with his knowledge and a few protective charms, he entered the decaying building. The air was thick with the scent of mold and decay, and the silence was deafening. As he explored the manor, he felt a presence watching him, a cold shiver running down his spine. In the grand ballroom, Isaac found the mirror. Its surface was still cloudy, but he could see his own reflection, distorted and faint. He reached out to touch the glass, and a surge of energy pulsed through him. The ghost appeared, her eyes filled with a mixture of anger and sorrow. "Who are you?" Isaac demanded, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at him. The ghost did not speak, but Isaac could feel her emotions flooding his mind. He saw flashes of her past, a life filled with pain and betrayal. She had been a young woman, betrayed by those she loved, left to die alone in the manor. Her spirit, consumed by anger and despair, had lingered, growing more powerful over the centuries. Isaac realized that the ghost's transformation was not just fueled by her own suffering but by the fear and pain of those who encountered her. Emily, with her sensitive soul, had become a vessel for the ghost's fury, amplifying her power. "I can help you," Isaac said softly, "but you must let go of your anger." The ghost's eyes flickered with uncertainty, and for a moment, Isaac saw a glimmer of the young woman she once was. He reached out again, this time with empathy and understanding, and the ghost began to fade, her form becoming less monstrous. Just as Isaac thought he was making progress, the manor was engulfed in a cold, dark mist. He heard whispers, not just from the ghost but from something deeper, more malevolent. The ghost's transformation was not merely her doing, there was a darker force at play, manipulating her pain for its own gain. Isaac knew he was dealing with something far more dangerous than he had anticipated. As he retreated from the manor, he vowed to return, more prepared and determined to uncover the true source of the darkness that haunted Alderwood. The mystery of the manor was far from over, and Isaac realized that to save Emily and the village, he would have to delve deeper into the shadows, confronting not just the ghost but the dark force that controlled her. The intrigue grew, pulling him further into the web of horror that had ensnared Alderwood for centuries. Isaac spent the next few days researching ancient texts and consulting with other experts in the supernatural. He uncovered stories of malevolent entities that thrived on human suffering, manipulating spirits to do their bidding. These entities were nearly impossible to banish, as they were deeply rooted in the places they haunted. In his quest for answers, Isaac came across a journal belonging to a former resident of Alderwood, a woman named Eleanor. She had lived in the manor long before it fell into ruin. Eleanor's journal recounted a series of disturbing events that mirrored Emily's experiences. She had seen the ghostly figure, felt the oppressive presence, and heard the whispers. Her final entry was a desperate plea for help, ending abruptly. Isaac knew he needed to find out what had happened to Eleanor and whether her fate was tied to the current haunting. He returned to the manor, determined to uncover the truth. This time, he brought with him a powerful relic, an amulet said to protect against dark forces. As Isaac ventured deeper into the manor, he felt the familiar chill in the air. The ghost appeared before him, her eyes pleading for release. Isaac held up the amulet, and the ghost recoiled, her form flickering. "Show me what happened to Eleanor," Isaac commanded. The ghost hesitated, then extended a hand. Isaac felt a pull, and suddenly he was no longer in the decaying manor but in a vision of the past. The manor was restored to its former glory, filled with light and life. He saw Eleanor, a young woman with kind eyes, moving about the house, unaware of the dark presence lurking in the shadows. The vision shifted, showing Eleanor discovering the mirror and the ghostly figure within. Unlike Emily, Eleanor had tried to communicate with the ghost, offering her compassion, but her kindness was met with a surge of dark energy, the entity twisting the ghost's pain into something monstrous. Eleanor's final days were a blur of terror and madness, her pleas for help unanswered. The vision ended with her final entry in the journal, the moment she realized that the dark entity was using her to amplify its power. Isaac was jolted back to the present, the ghost's eyes filled with sorrow. He understood now that the ghost was not the true enemy, she was a victim, just like Emily and Eleanor. The real threat was the entity that thrived on their suffering. Determined to end the cycle, Isaac devised a plan. He gathered the villagers, explaining the true nature of the haunting and enlisting their help. Together, they prepared a ritual to cleanse the manor and banish the dark entity once and for all. The night of the ritual was tense, the air thick with anticipation. As the villagers chanted, Isaac held the amulet aloft, its power radiating through the manor. The ghost appeared, her form wavering between sorrow and rage. Isaac reached out to her, his voice steady. "You don't have to suffer anymore. Let us help you find peace." The ghost's eyes softened, and she extended her hand. As their fingers touched, a blinding light filled the room. The dark entity roared in fury, its hold on the manor weakening. The villagers continued their chant, their voices growing stronger. With a final surge of energy, the entity was banished, its dark presence dissipating into the night. The ghost's form became clear, her eyes filled with gratitude. She whispered a final word of thanks before fading into the light, finally free. The manor, once a place of horror, was now at peace. The villagers celebrated, their fear replaced with hope. Isaac, though exhausted, felt a sense of fulfillment. He had uncovered the truth and ended the cycle of suffering. Isaac departed from Alderwood, believing that he had finally put an end to the haunting that plagued the manor. The villagers returned to their daily lives, and the manor stood silent and empty, no longer a source of fear. Yet, a sense of unease lingered in the air, a quiet reminder that darkness had once held sway over the village. Months passed, and Isaac's thoughts often returned to Alderwood. He could not shake the feeling that something remained unresolved. Despite his success in banishing the dark entity, there was a nagging doubt in his mind. Determined to find closure, he returned to the village. As Isaac approached the manor, he noticed an eerie silence. The air was thick with an oppressive stillness, and the once vibrant village seemed devoid of life. He entered the manor, his heart heavy with dread. The grand ballroom stood as it had before, the mirror's surface still cloudy with age. To his horror, Isaac found that the dark entity had returned, its presence stronger than ever. The ghostly figure of Emily appeared, her eyes filled with anguish. The entity had not been banished, it had merely lain dormant, waiting for the right moment to strike again. Isaac realized with a sinking heart that the entity had used him to grow even more powerful. His attempt to free the ghost had only served to strengthen the darkness that fed on fear and suffering. The ghost of Emily was now a puppet, her soul trapped in an eternal nightmare. Desperate to make amends, Isaac attempted the ritual once more, but the entity was too strong. It unleashed its fury upon him, and he felt his strength draining away. The villagers, sensing the resurgence of evil, fled their homes, abandoning Alderwood to its cursed fate. As Isaac lay on the cold, wooden floor, he understood the full extent of his failure. The entity had claimed him as its latest victim, feeding on his fear and regret. His vision dimmed, and the last thing he saw was the ghost of Emily, her eyes filled with sorrow as she watched him fade away. Alderwood was left to rot, the manor a perpetual reminder of the darkness that could never be truly vanquished. The villagers who had once sought hope now lived in constant fear, knowing that the entity could return at any moment. The story of Isaac's attempt to save the village became a cautionary tale, a warning of the dangers that lurk in the shadows. The ghost of little Emily remained, forever bound to the manor, her tragic fate intertwined with the dark entity. The whispers of her voice continued to echo through the halls, a haunting melody of despair that would never find peace.